Hi, everybody. I'm Annalise Kugler from My Joy Body podcast and myjoybody.com. It's nice to be here. This is my first video podcast. And today's topic is being good is its own reward. This was something that, for those of you that are familiar with my work, know that I work with the tarot. And this was something that came up on a tarot podcast when we were talking about justice. And this idea that being good and actually being self-responsible is in of itself the reward that we quite often seek from validation, right? So this really struck a chord with me because I'm very much an anarchist, I would say. Anarchy to me is about radical self-responsibility, and radical self-responsibility is something that we're hearing more of in the New Age spiritual movement. There is that terminology and showing up. So showing up means actually literally getting up and doing the work that you need to do to for your own personal care and liberation. So that's showing up. And then the other piece is so what happens when we show up? We actually take that initiative to be self-responsible, which is an anarchistic action in itself, because if we are giving our power to a system of governance, we're giving away our autonomy and we're giving away our sovereignty. And I think that this is a key issue that we don't look at when we're looking at colonization. Colonization has stripped the world of sovereignty and personal responsibility. And this is absolutely, in my opinion, must be rectified. We must turn the tables on this gross misuse of power, domination, and fear-controlled system that we're in. Just on a side note, I'm giving up voting, and I highly recommend that you give up voting too when you feel it's right for you. If you want to keep voting, that's great. If you want to keep living under the illusion that there is a fair and just political system, go right ahead. But I'm going to make a stand from henceforth. I'm going to stand up for sovereignty. I'm going to stand up for human rights. I'm going to stand up for the earth, and I'm going to do that by taking away my vote from this corrupt system. Now I know some people might jump down my throat about that one, and that's absolutely fine. Your opinion is completely validated, and in this universe that is the paradox, I wholeheartedly agree that two opinions that appear to be in opposition can both be correct. So rock on with whatever you think about whatever you think. That's great. All power to you. That's your sovereign right. Take it, use it, be in that truth. But for me, I'm pulling that back. But the reason that I'm mentioning that is because it comes back to this idea of radical self-responsibility. And what does that look like when we actually start to take responsibility for who we are, what we're doing, and how we are completely responsible for our own actions? And there is a kind of a degree of harshness in that, because not really. I mean, we start to talk then about karma, right? Karma. Most of us are familiar with karma. It's basically the law of cause and effect. If I'm a shitty person, shitty things happen to me, right? If I'm shitty to people, people will be shitty back to me. If I'm a good person, people will be good back to me. That is basically the law of cause and effect. And I believe it's one of the key principles, along with the paradoxical nature of the universe, one of the key principles of the universe, how it works. Comes down to resonance, doesn't it? So whatever frequency or resonance we put out, It hit things and comes back to us. So we're in a constant feedback with the universe. We're in constant dialogue of our resonance. Our resonance is going out, it's coming back to us. And there's a beautiful thing, because if we embrace karma, if we embrace karma, we can start to what's the word? Not modify, but um enhance our frequency, tweak our frequency. I'm not getting the right word, but we can harmonize. Now, that's a nice word. We can start to create a better harmony. So, if you take your voice into a car park, for example, and start to sing, you get an immediate feedback, and you can or a church, you can start to modify. Damn it, what's the word? You can start to modify your expression or your tonal output to be more harmonious. And that's when we start to take responsibility for karma. We acknowledge that karma exists. We acknowledge that we live in a resonant world. We acknowledge that that it is a world of the principle of what we get out, we put back. Cause and effect is how it rolls. Then we can start to subtly change and manipulate our reality through listening to our own resonance. Just notice that you can see my washing in the background. Oh, I am a multitasker. Those of you who are tuning in on the podcast won't be able to see the washing in my background, but if you hop over to my YouTube channel, you can see my face and my good looking hair, my irreverent haircut. I washed it so it's not so irreverent. Anyway, let's style it back out of my washing back to this concept. So when that little cliche, I guess, was dropped in my ear hole, the thing that I liked about it is being good is its own reward. The thing I liked about that is it was framing it out of a punitive karma, out of a punitive kind of like repercussion-y framework, like a way of looking at it, into something that it's like, actually, you know what? If you're good, you'll be good and you will receive good, and it will be its own reward. And isn't I think that's just a beautiful thing, and I, so if we take sovereignty as something that is inherently our birthright to create the life we want to live, if we're living with that principle that being good will generate goodness, and I believe, okay, this is a question that I asked myself a long time ago, and it was, what do people want? And I think basically what I came up with after thinking about this for a long time was happiness. Everybody wants to be happy. Now, we don't go about it in a very we don't go about happiness or acquiring happiness in very healthy ways anymore. It's quite a hedonistic society, but also we're working in opposition to this punitive kind of understanding. It's like, you will suffer, you will be made to feel guilty. Pleasure, just look at pleasure, where pleasure is in this world right now. You're not allowed to feel pleasure. You've got to feel guilt if you feel pleasure. So this kind of punitive system that we've got, where everything is wrong that we do. So being good, it doesn't actually have any appeal, because so much of what is good is loaded with so much baggage, which again, that's that idea of radical self-responsibility, showing up for yourself and doing the work, is so fucking important, because we need to be able to go, what is true in my body right now? Is pleasure bad in my body now? No, that's not true. Where did that come from? Where does that sit in my body? How can I digest those thought forms in my body? How can I digest those thought forms through understanding of how the physical nature and thought forms exist together. Radical self-responsibility is showing up for the knowledge of that thought forms are anchored into the physical form, and the way that we can dissolve and digest them is by sitting in them and observing them. Or whatever your, I mean, that's my methodology, whatever your methodology of showing up and doing the work to uh, release these social conditionings and these, we call them in yoga vikalpas, these thought forms that aren't true. So, we're working against a lot, and we're working. I guess the thing is, if we're working in opposition, and then we're working in the energy of the thing. You know how Einstein was always like, you can't change the thing by being at the level of the thing. You've got to be in a different level of thing. So I think meeting the stuff that we need to change or to rectify or to upgrade at the level of the thing, it kind of perpetuates it, kind of makes it more stuck. It's sort of like re-traumatizing, the idea of re-traumatizing oneself by living the thing again and again and again through speaking through the story or feeling the feelings. Doesn't really work. The story doesn't work unless we're rewriting the story. Yeah, so showing up in that space of contrast is really hard. We have to show up in contrast. We have to show up in the uncomfortable places. We have to bring our awareness into those uncomfortable places. But if we have that aspiration to show up into those places to do the hard work, so we can actually get to a state of more loving, giving service, being good as its own reward, if we can step into that, and the authority to do so, the authority to live in love, the authority to transcend fear-based social structures, the authority to question our beliefs, our authority to allow other people's authority. What about that? I mean, my God, like, how often do you see somebody finding personal power by standing in opposition to somebody else? When we just discussed, right, that the universe is a paradox, two things can be right at the same time whilst looking like they're diametrically opposed, right? That's true and not probably. That's the cosmic joke, right? But the amount of people that I've seen recently, especially with the last couple of years since 2020, how many people are finding personal power in opposition to other people, finding personal power and being right about something. And it's really sad. It's symptomatic that we are living in a disempowered society, and our systems of governance, our systems of schooling, our systems of working, our silo-based thinking, our silo-based everything's in silos. Our medical system works in silos and isolation, is keeping us in that negative oppositional space where sovereignty doesn't have any right. Because if we were sovereign, if we had true ability and to regulate ourselves and choose for ourselves, free from conditioning. Now that's a big term, because can we be free from conditioning? I don't know. But free from fear-based capitalist system. So if we had that potential to be decolonized in our brain, what would that sovereignty look like? We would be searching, I'm sure, we would be searching and finding power in places like nature. We would be finding power in communing with waterfalls. We would be finding power in communing with mountains. What if there was no fear and stigma about sexuality? We would be finding so much power in pleasure and sexual relationships. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. If we can destigmatize and take fear out of the equation, then actually being good. I mean, this is very much a question of values too, isn't it? I mean, look, yes, it could be very much a question of values. And if you want to open it up, it's like, what does good mean? Da 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 da. And like find your power in opposition to this, to what I'm saying. If you want, find your power in finding, like something that um that interests you, because that's great, because ask those questions, ask all of those questions. But I think fundamentally you'll find that nothing that I'm saying is in opposition to anything, because this is a big yes conversation. I'm bringing it all in and saying yes to it all, yes to it all. And I think ultimately, what is good? Clean water is good, and I don't think anybody could deny that, right? So then there's that kind of question about fundamental truth. There is fundamental truth, but there's just a lot of different ways to look at it. And um living in accordance with truth, universal truth. Gosh, I know that I'm like really opening up myself here, but universal truth is um like clean water. It's something that no matter what perspective we sit on, um, what perspective we look at, we are all in agreement. And with sovereignty, this capacity to align ourselves with fundamental truths is the reflective point of what is good. So, yeah. I think it's beautiful, and I think it's for me. There's quite a liberation in that. If we can transcend that fear base, we're always going to be working in contrast, right? We're living in a dual world. We're always going to be working in contrast. So, um, you know, to say that. I mean, sovereignty wouldn't be sovereignty without this fear-based society, right? This anarchistic idea that we are self-responsible wouldn't exist if there wasn't this structure of fear. So, I mean, it's a beautiful playground, isn't it? Because we do live in this dual world, and it is all contrast. This actually comes very much off the bat of something that I read a long time ago, which really interested me, as in blew my mind. And it was a quote by Rudolf Steiner. And he said, oh, excuse me. Oh, I think I talk too much and breathe too little when I'm podcasting. Self-mastery as the foundation for true citizenship. And I read that and I went, what the far out are you? What? I had never heard anything so radical in all my life, but wow, does that resonate with you? Self-mastery as the foundation for true citizenship. So true citizenship is when we belong, when we actually belong into a collective, when we are a citizen of a collective, right? And the foundation of that, as Rudolf Steiner speculates, is self-mastery, which is radical self-responsibility, which is sovereignty. And the other thing, I mean, look, can we be sovereign? Can we be self-responsible? Can we be mastered if we have a master? If we are being told what to do, told what to wear, told when to work, told how many hours to work in the day, told that there are 12 months in a year, Gregorian calendar, can we be sovereign if we incarnate in this matrices, this world that is actually nature's world? This is nature's world. This is not a human world. This is a natural construct which we are trying to live outside of. So can we actually be sovereign whilst we're in slavitude? I don't know if that's a word. Slavitude to a system that tries to be outside of nature. I don't think we can. And it's a really important question to ask. Like, can we be self-reliant when we're being treated like children? And, um, more and more, I always looked at the human race as children. I was like, look at these children. They don't know what they're up to. But the more that I look at it, the more that I see that the children are actually the governing forces. And humanity, my generation, has grown the fuck up. Okay, there's still some really lost beings, but all in all, we have grown. I would say that we've grown in my lifetime, we've grown from petulant toddlers to my generation, which were radical teenagers, into I feel like we're in this phase at the moment of our 20s, like humanity's in its 20s. It's like knows all the problems, but still fiercely holding on to that childlike wonder, and kind of studying what we want to take through into the next life, and can we into the next part of our lives, and can we take what we need to, and I mean God, can we take what we need to into the next part of our lives if there is no room for our dreams and visions, which in this capitalistic fear-based society, there's how many people do you know want to live in community? How many people do you know? Oh my God, how many people do you know that cannot build a cabin on their own land for their friend because of laws? They're limited by capitalist fear-based society. And how many people cannot actually show up to be good for good's sake because they're so stressed out by having to work 9 to 5 and pay exorbitant mortgages. So for me, I see that the only future is self-sovereignty, self-mastery, radical self-responsibility within the collective of society, small social pods and bigger social pods and bigger social pods, in line with nature. But we can't do that until we let go of the old system. So that takes me full circle back to why I'm not going to vote anymore. Yeah. So I'd love to know what you guys think about all of this. This has been my beautiful musings about goodness being its own reward. Yeah, I hope that it was interesting to you. I hope that I was cohesive. I've got a little disclaimer, neurodiverse disclaimer. I try my very best to keep succinct and on the correct tangent. I love you all. Elle aime tout le monde, and she loves everybody. And I will catch you at some stage. Please go and check out my video on YouTube if you want to. And check out my washing and my hairdo. And otherwise, yeah, have a beautiful, beautiful life. Much love and see you later. Peace.